Good morning, and welcome to your morning cereal. Okay, good morning and welcome to Thursday. It's been a chilly week for many of us, which makes me feel better that today is National Comfy Day. Sounds good to me, sign me up. A little couch time in my comfy sweats, catching up on some Yellowstone. Calgon, take me away. Do you remember that saying? Well, stay warm out there and hang in there. Spring is only 28 days away. Well, let's spring into today's quotes. One fun, nostalgic quote, and then a second quote to tease our book review later in the episode. As usual, I hope one of these quotes will speak to you and jumpstart your day in a positive direction. All right, we'll stay with the spring theme for the first quote today, which is, quote, "No winter lasts forever. No spring skips its turn," end quote. This quote works on many levels, right? Whether you're just waiting for warmer weather like we are today, or if you're in a different season of life and waiting for a warmer chapter in life. They both are coming. Just keep moving forward. And today's teaser quote from the book review is, quote, "A drop of honey catches more flies than a gallon of gall," end quote. And as usual, we'll unpack that here in just a few minutes during the book review segment. But first, let's jump into our usual dose of fun and historic facts from this day in history. Today's news facts and birthdays are for February 20th. Starting back in 1872, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Met, in New York City, it opened up to the public. Then in 1877, Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, it premiered and it went on to become one of the world's best-known ballets. Then in 1902, Ansel Adams, the most important landscape photographer of the 20th century, he was born in San Francisco. Then in 1962, NASA's John Glenn, he became the first American to orbit Earth, and he did it 3 times. Glenn's 5-hour spaceflight came almost a year after the Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin, he orbited the Earth on April 12, 1961. Then in 1967, singer Kurt Cobain was born on this date. Then skipping all the way up to 1998, Tara Lipinski, she became the youngest figure skating American to win gold at the Winter Olympics. And then finally in 2007, Baywatch actress Carmen Electra, she divorced rocker Dave Navarro due to irreconcilable differences after less than 3 years of marriage. Man, I thought they were a forever couple. That's a shocker to me. Anyways, happy birthday. If today is your birthday, you share a birthday with young singer Olivia Rodrigo. She's 22. Singer Rihanna, she's 37 today. My wife and I actually saw Rihanna, 15 years ago or so. She was walking into a Victoria's Secrets on the Mag Mile in Chicago. I doubt she shops there anymore. Continuing on, comedian Trevor Noah, he's 41. And then 90s supermodel Cindy Crawford, she's 59 today. And lastly, the round mound rebound, Charles Barkley, he's 62. And the number one movie on this date back in 1983 was the movie Tootsie. Now, I've never seen this movie, but it stars Dustin Hoffman, who received a nomination for an Academy Award for his role as an actor that dressed as a woman to get a role on a soap opera. And the number one song on this date back in 1986 was "How Will I Know" by Whitney Houston. This is a classic, wholesome Whitney Houston song, which actually featured her mother singing the background vocals, and it became Whitney's second number one hit, following her first number one hit, "Saving All My Love for You," in the previous year. Okay, well, let's move on to some personal growth in the book review segment of Morning Cereal. This is where we take a few minutes to reflect on lessons learned from the current book we're reading, and currently we're reading through Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a timeless book that is consistently on all the must-read lists, and it's packed with rock-solid advice and actions for us all to use and build healthy foundational concepts to live by. Yesterday, we finished the 3rd chapter in part 3, entitled, quote, "If you are wrong, admit it." And Carnegie started the chapter suggesting that we beat others to the punch if we are wrong, saying, quote, "If we know we are going to be rebuked anyhow, isn't it far better to beat the other person to it and just do it ourselves? Isn't it much easier to listen to the self-criticism than to bear the condemnation from alien lips?" End quote. And if we do this, chances are that the other person will have a forgiving attitude and minimize our mistakes. Carnegie's principle number 3 in a chapter entitled, If You're Wrong, Admit It, principle number 3 is, if you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. Today, we're still in part 2 of How to Win Friends and Influence People. And recall, part 2 is entitled, How to Win People to Your Way of Thinking. And today, we begin chapter 4 of part 2, which is entitled, A Drop of Honey. Carnegie again shoves us straight into the deep end with an opening quote from Woodrow Wilson about our tempers. Wilson said, quote, "If you come at me with your fist doubled, I think I can promise you that mine will double as fast as yours. But if you come to me and say, let us sit down and take counsel together, and if we differ from each other, understand why it is that we differ, just what the points at issue are, we will presently find that we are not so far apart after all, that the points on which we differ are few and the points on which we agree are many, and that if we only have the patience and the candor and the desire to get together, we will get together," end quote. Carnegie illustrates this through a story about Rockefeller and how he handled a bloody strike of his miners in Colorado. The miners had wanted more pay, and the conflict had risen to such a level that the U.S. government sent military to keep the peace. But peace wasn't kept, and some lives were actually lost. So you can imagine the level of emotion and anger and violence towards Rockefeller at the height of the confrontation. And Carnegie suggests that Rockefeller delivered one of the most eloquent and radiant speeches to his miners, people that, quote, wanted to hang him by the neck from an apple tree, end quote. Rockefeller had spent a few days previous meeting with the workers in their houses, hearing from them, and making friends. And as Rockefeller stood in front of the crowd of angry workers that day, he addressed them, quote, not as strangers, but as friends, and with a spirit of mutual friendship, our common interests. It is only by your courtesy that I am here. And after this speech by Rockefeller, the workers went back to work without a word and without the wage increase. Here is part of what Rockefeller said that day, quote, "This is a red-letter day in my life. It is the first time I have ever had the good fortune to meet the representatives of the employees of this great company, its officers and superintendents, together, and I can assure you that I am proud to be here, and that I shall remember this gathering as long as I live. Had this meeting been held 2 weeks ago, I should have stood here a stranger to most of you, recognizing few faces. Having had the opportunity last week of visiting all the camps in the southern coalfield and talking individually with practically all of the field representatives, except those who are away, having visited you in your homes, met many of your wives and children, we meet here not as strangers, but as friends. And it is in that spirit of mutual friendship that I am glad to have this opportunity to discuss with you our common interests. Since this is a meeting of the officers of the company and the representatives of the employees, it is only by your courtesy that I am here, for I am not so fortunate as to be either one or the other. And yet I feel that I am intimately associated with you men, for in a sense I represent both the stockholders and the directors," end quote. Carnegie asks how different that situation may have been if Rockefeller stood up there that day throwing facts and figures around, arguing his point with tones and insinuations that the other people were wrong. Would there have been more anger? Would there have been more hatred, more revolt? Well, we'll end today on a quote from Abraham Lincoln, and I bet you may already be familiar with this one. Lincoln said, quote, "It is an old and true maxim that a drop of honey catches more flies than a gallon of gall. So with men, if you would win a man to your cause, first convince him that you are his sincere friend. Therein is a drop of honey that catches his heart, which, say what you will, is the great high road to his reason," end quote. The high road. All of Carnegie's paths lead us to taking the high road, being the bigger person. It's hard at times, but today we heard a tale, and tomorrow we'll hear more tales of successful people that learned and have implemented this philosophy to their great advantage. So come back tomorrow for that. All right, we've got that Friday Eve energy, people. So if you're facing a big project, a personal goal, or just another day on the grind, know that you've got this. have the audacity to just keep moving forward in a positive way. Thanks for joining today. We'll see you tomorrow, and have a fantastic day. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to the Morning Serial podcast on the One Life Live It channel. You can find more episodes and videos by visiting our YouTube channel and the website at Sean Inglis and at SeanInglis.com, where you can also follow our other podcasts, the Mr. and Mrs. Inglis podcast and the Life Happens podcast. In these other podcasts, we'll dive deeper into everyday issues, self-improvement and well-being, business and finance, and we welcome special guests too. So join us. It'll be a good time, I promise. Thanks again for listening. Have a fantastic day, and we'll see you tomorrow.